My brothers in Islam, the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in another hadith narrating to the companions, he said, لَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ رَجُلًا يَتَقَلَّبُ فِي الْجَنَّةِ. He said, I saw with my own eyes a man that was rolling about freely in the paradise. Yani this is wahi. Allah Azza wa Jal allowed the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam to see a man in the paradise enjoying his time, doing what he wants in the paradise. طيب, how did he end up in the paradise? What did he do? Did he pray the nights, fast the days? Did he do Hajj every year? And by the way, this man has been described in another hadith, لَمْ يَعْمَلْ خَيْرًا قَطْ. He did not do any good. Whenever you see this in a hadith that guarantees or speaks about a person in the paradise, and it says he hasn't done any good, what is meant by this is that he didn't do anything more than the obligations. He did the obligations, he stopped there. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, I saw a man enjoying himself in the paradise. This person had never done anything of extra goodness. What was the reason? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, في شجرة قطعها من طريق المسلمين كانت تؤذي الناس. Because of a tree that he cut from the path of the Muslims, which used to harm the people. In another narration, there was a thorny branch on the path of people. So he picked it up and he moved it to the side of the street because it was harming people. That's all he did. In the hadith, he says Allah appreciated that which he did and he forgave him and he admitted him into the paradise. Allahu Akbar. Don't underestimate any good deed regardless of its size. If the opportunity is there, take by it. You know, subhanallah, sometimes you may be driving and there's someone that wants to go in front of you and you're doing all you can to stop him from going in front. It's going to take 1 second for you to slow down and bring him in front. You don't know. Perhaps this insignificant deed may earn you Allah Azza wa Jal's mercy and forgiveness and the paradise. Don't belittle. Sometimes people may enter al-masjid and you know there's 2 more minutes left for the iqamah and they're standing, just waiting for the iqamah. Ya akhi, you don't know, maybe you sit down, you make a dua and that will earn you Allah's mercy and forgiveness. We don't know. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned and he says in a hadith, ما منكم من أحد يتوضأ فيبلغ أو فيسبغ الوضوء ثم يقول أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله إلا فتحت له أبواب الجنة الثمانية يدخل من أيها شاء. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says anyone who does wudu and perfects his wudu, does it correctly, and then afterwards, in seconds, he says, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. Shahada. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says the 8 doors of the paradise open and he would enter from whichever door he wants. Don't belittle. Don't say it's a dhikr, it's a shahada, we've already said it, we know, Allah, we're coming to the salat is bigger, I'm looking for the bigger opportunities. You don't know where Allah Azza wa Jal's mercy and forgiveness is. It perhaps could be in the tiny small things that you don't consider. Or you think that they're sunan and move on, let's go to the fard immediately. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says in another hadith, there's no one who makes wudu and then he performs 2 rak'at facing al-qibla with his body and facing Allah with his heart, except that Allah Azza wa Jal will admit him into the paradise. 2 rak'at. Sometimes, as I said to you, enter al-masjid and there's 3-4 minutes left for the iqamah. So you choose to stand and wait for the iqamah as opposed to praying 2 rak'at. Perhaps the 2 rak'at you pray would have got you the paradise and the fard that you prayed perhaps had no weight and Allah Azza wa Jal. You don't know. Sometimes you come back home after al-isha from al-masjid. You have wudu and you come in and you have the ability and the time and the effort to just go to a room and pray 2 rak'at and come out. Don't believe if the opportunity is there, if it's present, if everything is, all the arrangements are made and all it requires from you is just a bit of effort, then take mayat and don't underestimate it. Perhaps Allah Azza wa Jal will grant you goodness and paradise and success from it. And on this point, I share with you a story of a woman in history. Her name is Zubaydah bint Ja'far radiyallahu anha. She existed 1,200 years ago from today. And she was married to Harun al-Rashid, a Khalifa of Islam. And when she first done Hajj in her life, she saw a massive problem and a difficulty the Hujjaj went through. She came from Iraq and she noticed that people were carrying water for miles and miles, and they were getting tired under the sun, in the heat, the dry desert. So she thought of an idea, and she was a wealthy woman. She said, I'm going to build a water canal, water channels, and bring them to Arafah and Mina and Muzdalifah in the Hajj sites, and bring this water from Al-Ta'if. Al-Ta'if was a source of water. There was a lot of water there. So she's going to make a channel and make it easier for the Hujjaj. And it took almost 10, 15 years. She constructed this with her own wealth. Her engineers said to her, it's going to cost a lot of money. She said, if every pick of the axe was going to cost 1 dinar, we're doing it. And it was a water channel of almost 40, 50 kilometers, many years of work. Eventually, the project was completed. Imagine this, it cost in the hundreds of millions, the currency of the time. And it was activated, and for 1,000 years, Hujjaj benefited from it. And it made their trip easy. Water was there. If you're in Arafah, you need water, you just go a few kilometers, you'll get it. And the water channel it's still there. If you go to Mecca, you'll see some of it. There between Arafah and as you're going back to Mecca, you'll see some of it is still there. So she died, this woman. Hundreds and hundreds of years later, people are benefiting from this project. Then she was seen in the dream by a righteous man. And she appeared in the dream and said, Allah has forgiven my sins. He asked her, what did you do that earned you Allah's forgiveness? You'd all think this huge project that she invested lots of money and time in. She answered and said, because of 2 rak'at I used to pray at duha time, about 10 in the morning. 2 rak'at. That's what Allah forgave me because of. Allahu Akbar. Whatever the authenticity of the story, the point is this principle and rule and fundamental we're sharing. It comes in line with the ahadith of the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that anyone who does any type of deed, no matter how small it is, could be the reason for why he earns Allah's mercy and forgiveness. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده. Brothers in Islam, the second rule and principle for success in this life and in the next, and to avoid destruction in this life and the next, never belittle a sin regardless of its size. Never belittle a sin, no matter how small or insignificant it may seem to you. If an opportunity of sin appears before you, be aware, be careful. No matter how tempting it is to do it, be careful. And don't say and convince yourself, oh well, at least I'm not like these people. I'm not doing a shirk, and I don't murder, and I don't drink alcohol, and I'm not doing zina and gambling. It's just something tiny. Don't ever convince yourself to do a sin based on its size and how small it is. Never belittle a sin, no matter how small it is, because it is perhaps that the sin that you belittle earns you the curse of Allah and His wrath and His anger, and earns you the hellfire and closes the doors of the paradise up until the day of judgment. Perhaps it could be the case. Where do we get all this from? And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a hadith, وَإِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَتَكَلَّمُ بِالْكَلِمَةِ مِنْ سَخَطِ اللَّهِ لَا يَظُنُّ أَن تَبْلُغَ مَا بَلَغَتْ. In another narration, لا لا يلقي لها بالا يهوي بها في النار 70 خريفا. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, perhaps a man, a person, he speaks a word from the wrath of Allah, a word that Allah dislikes and He hates, a word, not thinking it would reach what it would reach of severity in the sight of Allah. And as a result, because of this word he said carelessly, he is thrown in the hellfire 70 years. Not just slips in the fire, comes out, he's thrown in there 70 years. The narration says, فَيَكْتُبُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ بِهَا سَخَطَهُ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. Perhaps he says a word out of the anger of Allah, and Allah writes His anger upon him until the day of judgment, no matter what good he does after it. So this إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ is the scary part. You say a lie, you say a swear word, you slander someone, you curse someone, you mock someone, you backbite someone, you make takfir on someone, such and such is a kafir. You make tabdi' on someone, such and such is a person of bid'ah. Well, you got no clue what you're saying. Carelessly, لا يلقي لها بال. Doesn't assume that it will reach something in the sight of Allah. But it does, and it will get him in Jahannam. We need to be very careful, my brothers in Islam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentions this hadith. And then elsewhere, he actually gives an example of this. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he says to us about a righteous man in the time of Bani Israel. He used to walk past a corrupt sinner of Bani Israel, and he always used to remind him, brother, haram, stop doing such and such. And he'd move on. And he'd come the next day, brother, haram, and he'd remind him. So one day, the corrupt man said to the righteous man, خلاص دعني وشأني, leave me alone. This is between me and Allah. Stop reminding me. Go. So the righteous man said to the sinner, Wallahi la yaghfiru Allahu lak. He said to him, listen brother, by Allah, Allah will never forgive you. And he walked off. Allah Azza wa Jal said, من ذا الذي يتألى علي ألا أغفر لفلان. Allah Azza wa Jal from above the throne, He said, who is this man? Man ذا يعني, who's this worthless, insignificant person who takes an oath by me that I will not forgive such and such a person? فإني قد غفرت لفلان وأحبطت عملك. Indeed, I have forgiven that sinner and I have destroyed your righteous deeds. The narrator of the hadith says, by Allah, this righteous man spoke a word. Heck, word, يعني half a second you can say it. It destroyed his life and his afterlife. That's what it did. So in other words, don't belittle the sin regardless of its size, and be careful of the tongue. And my brothers in Islam, you may ask, why am I particularly pointing to the tongue and gave examples on this? Because I tell you why. Some may find it very easy to avoid unlawful things. Some may find it very easy to avoid injustice, adultery, theft, drinking alcohol, looking at the haram. Some find it easy, but finds it very difficult to control the movement of his tongue. And so you may see a person that is known for his religion and devotion and worship, yet he speaks words that anger Allah Azza wa Jal without realizing it. A single word can cause him to fall a great distance into the punishment of Allah Azza wa Jal. And how often do you see a person who avoids major sins and avoids injustice and oppression, but his tongue attacks the honor of people, both the living and the dead? Heck, without caring about what he said. So my brothers in Islam, we must avoid belittling sins, regardless of their size, no matter how small and insignificant they may be. A forbidden glance, a haram click or a clip that is on TikTok or Instagram, thinking, Allah, it's just a few seconds, no one's going to notice. In the gatherings, avoid the backbiting, the mocking, don't join. Cutting off blood relatives, thinking, Allah, it doesn't matter, it's nothing, or they deserve it. Let all these matters, give them importance and avoid them all in your life. So make a tawbah ila Allah Azza wa Jal. Seek His forgiveness. There's always a chance to turn, mend things, reform and correct yourself and reform and do that which pleases Allah Azza wa Jal, so that you can get a chance to enter His mercy and His paradise and earn His pleasure. And finally, my brothers in Islam, we said these are two fundamentals, these are two principles. Whoever follows them, follows these two principles, will find success bi'idhnillah and goodness in his life. And how do we reach that level? This is the final comment. How do you reach that level? How can you be of those who never underestimate the goodness regardless of its size, and of those who never belittle the sin regardless of its size? I tell you how. Bilal ibn Sa'ad mentioned something very important. He said, لا تنظر إلى صغر المعصية وانظر إلى عظيم من تعصي. Never look at the size of a sin, rather look at the greatness of the one who you're sinning against. So in other words, it all goes back to your knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jal. The more you know who Allah is through His names and attributes and actions, the more and more you're able to implement these fundamentals and principles in life. So learn about Allah's names and attributes. Imagine you knew Allah Al-Kareem, Al-Rahman, Al-Wasi', Al-Warith, Al-Ghafoor, Al-Wadud. Imagine you knew these names of His. Wallah, you'd run to do any of the good that you see in front of your face. And imagine then you knew Allah, Shadidul Iqab, Sari'ul Hisab. Imagine you know Him by what He did to previous nations on earth that did sins and thought they're nothing. Like the people of Salih, when they just killed a camel, He just slit it and doesn't matter. And Allah would destroy it. Read what Allah did. Then you'd be able to not belittle the sins regardless of their size. والله أعلم. هذا وصلوا وسلموا رحمكم الله على خير البرية وأزكى البشرية محمد بن عبد الله صاحب الحوض والشفاعة. فقد أمركم الله تعالى بأمر بدأ فيه بنفسه وثنى بملائكته المسبحة بقدسه وأيه بكم أيها المؤمنون، فقال عز من قائل: إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد، وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم، وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.